all that.
I know we need someone to volunteer who will be an radio voice. If anyone does radio on the side or something, let us know. You can be our new intro. But really quick, just so everyone does know, we are recording now. So this is EDU Endpoint Office Hours. It is September 26th, 2023. Big day. We've had it's a historic moment, if you will, in the world of Windows. Because we've had some exciting announcements this morning. So I think today it's just us, your friendly co-hosts for EDU Endpoint Office Hours. No special guest speakers or anything like that. It's just us. And we're kind of doing a Windows Copilot, or I'm sorry, see, I'm already messing up. Copilot in Windows. I have to follow the Microsoft marketing terms.
Right.
Copilot in Windows session, and it's kind of unplugged. Session. So, yeah, Scott, do you have something you can share, or do you want me to share?
Yeah, go ahead and do the deck, and then
Okay.
we'll walk through the actual demo in a VM.
Awesome.
So okay.
So this is a little more off the cuff. Feel free to throw questions in chat. We'll try to make this as informative as we can. Again, Richard's kind of already prefaced, all of this is literally hot off the presses. We know that there was a lot announced today. We weren't really prepped as much in advance as you think we would be. So we're learning alongside with you, and that's kind of the point of office hours is to learn together. So yeah, Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
Take it
and
away.
kind of walk through the
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we're still going to have our normal slides and links to normal things that we talk about every week, but just some cool stuff. We were recognized as a leader in desktop as a service. So if you're looking at things such as Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 and Gartner in your institution, organization is a big deal, then obviously we are considered a leader in that space. So that is an honor on our to be recognized. Also, there's
Scott, hang on one sec. Am I missing slides? Okay, I see slides. Now you're talking about Gartner. Was I just missing that, or was
slide 2?
Okay.
Yeah, it's on slide 2. I see it.
Okay. It wasn't when you were talking about it.
Okay.
Now we're on slide 3.
All right. Yeah. So, and then of course, some of the new security tools are there to. We also announced some new security tools. So part of it is we have rebranded Windows Defender Application Guard to now called, has been rebranded. I'll tell you what that is in just a minute with anticipation. And then I'll also tell you what config refresh is as well. This is one of the new, some of the new features that are available on Windows. Last week also, 2309 for Microsoft Intune, that service release was really dropped. So one of the big things that you'll see in there is now we have remote help in a view-only mode for Mac OS. So again, going back to some of that Mac goodness that we had 2 weeks ago, we're going to have it now. You have, and again, that's already included in the remote help licensing. That was again put in your tenant. It's part of your existing A3, A5 benefits. So if any of you are, go ahead, Richard.
Just so no additional cost for Mac OS remote help if you currently are an A3 or A5 subscriber. Yeah. So it's huge. It's big, and there's probably going to be more to come with that too. So right now, like Scott said, it's view only.
Yeah, yeah. So it will, additional features will be added to that. The link's there, so you go check it out. There's a lot that we put in last month as well for all operating systems. So go check it out. If you have any questions, just post in the team. So this week we're talking about Copilot in Windows, but we're really more or less going to also focus on the whole September moment. And what I mean by the moment is that, you know, Windows, the way that we've released the new features in Windows today is not all necessarily done by the traditional service pack. And yes, Dan, we will talk about that Windows backup application. I'll get to that in just a minute. Probably we have some other, I don't know. I know what you're talking about, but hold that thought. But anyway, we want to talk about how you can control some of these quote new feature updates that are being deployed, and what the process is to be able to turn this on. Obviously, let's take the backup application out of that because I know that showed up on some machines without. Anyway, I won't go into that, but I want to talk about the September moment update, what's included in it. There's more to it than just Copilot, but obviously that's the big thing. And the other thing I want to be very clear about is that a lot of times, you know, the fear amongst us as IT pros is like, oh gosh, Microsoft is releasing all these features, and I got to somehow turn these things. These things are all going to be turned on, and I'm going to get a flood of calls. Well, not first off. The one thing that you got to understand is right now those features are all turned off by default. There is actually some steps that you have to put into place that if you want to start putting these features out there today. Some of your organizations might be more able to early adopt these features than others. But some of you may want to just start testing these features to a small group of users today or starting soon. And so part of our conversation today is not only one to show you what the new features are, but some of the steps we had to go through to actually get these to be turned on. And then what does that technical process look like from an Intune management stand set, from the perspective of what you have to set up in Intune, but also what you need to set up in Windows. Now, for simplicity today, we are only going to show you the areas in Intune, but what some rules that we had to set. But I want to be very clear that there are also corresponding group policy objects that correspond to these rules that we've made in Intune as well. So a key point in this is that you may need to update your GPOs in your central store to get all of these latest policies. So, and probably are not all of you have not been updated, and it may have been some time for some of you that you've last updated your policy. So this probably will be a good inflection point to talk to your team that if you manage the domain controllers, maybe you put in your change control request to do it, or if you have another team that does it, start those discussions internally within your organization. So this is definitely going to be a Copilot in Windows or September Moment Unplugged edition. Okay, so what is the Windows 11 22 H2 September Moment? Today it is available as an optional update. So again, optional updates, as we've explained in the past, on the 4th week of the month, usually we call it the D week update, these new features are available. That doesn't mean that they're automatically turned on once you apply this update, but they are part of that update that we're releasing. Now, going forward, they will also be included in the October 2023 security update. So all of those features will have the ability to be turned on once you apply the October 2023 update. Now, what I want to stress here, and I'm going to be very clear about, is that these features are not turned on by default. So I want to be very clear about that. They are not on by default. There are some steps that have to be put in place for you to actually have these turned on. So 2 links that you need to familiarize yourself with. One is called the Delivering Continuous Innovation in Windows 11. This was a blog post that we published back earlier this year, but it talks about that policy, and we'll go through some demos a little bit later here in our talk. And then there's also a new policy that came out in August called Enable and Control Optional Updates for your organization. So both of these links here are just super important that you can refer to. Now, with this, if you decide to install this optional update today, it is going to take your Windows 11 2020 22H2 build to 2361. So 22621.2361 is the build that you have to be on. And if you even go to the Windows Update history page, you'll see that this is the page there. Now, the other thing is, in order for these, quote, new updates to be turned on, even if you install the optional update, these new features are not going to be turned on out of the box. You actually have to have the controlled feature rollout piece turned on. And what that does is it actually installs what's called a Windows configuration update. And we've actually linked to that below. And that's some of the things that we're going to share the links. So that actually is where once you apply that configuration update, which does require a reboot, by the way, or at least in my particular case, it did, because I didn't have the enabled control feature rollout turned on until about 30 minutes ago. It did require a reboot, and then all the new features lit up. So this is basically how to turn it on. And for some of you,
Scott,
go ahead.
So are you operating off of a different deck? Because
I'm looking at the one that you're shared out.
Yeah, but Garrett is actually sharing the slides, and you're moving ahead before the slides actually move on screen.
All right, sync presenter 4. Okay, go to the next slide, Garrett.
There we go.
All right,
okay. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. All right, so this is how you want to turn on if you want to have access to these new features. And again, remember, all of these new features are going to be turned off by default until the Windows 11 23H2 release, especially the Copilot Windows. And that's probably the big one that, as customers, you're probably the most concerned with, because of all the AI stuff that's associated with it. And yes, Tyler, we will give you the PowerPoint. So, but just remember, all of this will be turned off by default. So the first thing that you have to do is enable optional updates with control feature rollout. That is a custom OMA URI that you will need to enable. And so Richard was kind enough, 5 minutes before the meeting, we actually modified our slides. We put that in there, and you can see you need to make sure you include the device that's an integer, and you set that to 1. And there's actually a registry key. We can actually document that for you, that you can go check to make sure that you allow for optional content. So this actually allows for that to come down. The other piece that you have to enable, not just the optional updates to allow for your devices to receive the optional update, is that there's actually another setting that you have to have called allow temporary enterprise feature control that's in the settings catalog. And so that's in the Windows update. That is in Windows Update for Business. It's also there as a GPO as well. So if you install, in my particular situation, I did not have, when I was testing this afternoon, I just installed the actual update, which was 503 01, excuse me, the 503010 update. And so again, just installing the MSU on its own, let's say you manually apply it to your machine, does not by itself turn on all these new features. You actually need to have these other two pieces here involved. You need to have the optional updates with controlled feature rollout, and then you also need to enable, and again, you can do this in Intune, you can also do this with GPO, to allow temporary enterprise feature control. So once that is in there, then believe it or not, I was able to run a check for updates. And then you'll see here a Windows configuration update was made available to my workstation. this is what has all of the features to it. So if you actually click on the link, and you can do this on your own, and I'll share this one out. I mean, again, well, you'll have links to all of this, but once you actually have that configuration update installed, that's going to allow for all of those new features to be turned on. So, and once that's installed after the reboot, again, in my case, I applied the update first, but I think there is a way that if you have these features turned on before the optional updates applied, I think those are going to be on all by default. But again, we'll have to test out that scenario.
Actually, Scott, let me kind of explain a bit why you have to go through
Okay.
this hoop now. So with these moment releases, we had a moment release in February, we had one in May, and then now we have one here in September. And so the moment releases, think of them sort of like, it's not really a service pack, but it's not a full OS swap or a full in-place upgrade. And so the way that the moment releases work is that the content is delivered via a cumulative update or a series of cumulative updates up until a certain point. And so today is that certain point. Like today is when all the features that you would get for something like 23H2 or for like the next cumulative update that we have for Patch Tuesday that's going to hit on like the second Tuesday of the month. All these features are turned off by default until the next feature release. So the next feature release is going to be Windows 11 23H2. That is going to happen in the fourth quarter of this year, which fourth quarter starts next month. We probably aren't going to see it in December, so you're either going to see it October or November. And so what we're doing here right now is we're giving you the content in today's cumulative update. All the features that we're releasing for the September moment that's going to land in 23H2, all that stuff is here today. But it's off by default, like Scott's been saying. Like all that stuff is turned off by default. So if you're worried about, hey, Copilot's going to be turned on and it's going to be this big mess that we're going to have to manage, that's not the case. Because as we're about to show you, or we've been explaining, we had to go through some hoops to actually turn this on and get it enabled right now. So the stuff that we're giving you right now, the stuff that we're telling you to enable optional updates and to allow temporary enterprise feature control, we're giving you this info so you can test this stuff out now. So you can play with Copilot, you can play with all the features that are going to be released in 23H2. You'll have that capability today if you want to turn that stuff on. But you don't have to do any of this stuff if you don't want to. If you're like, hey, this all sounds really complicated and I don't want to go down this path, then fine, you don't have to. But if you want to try out Copilot, if you want to try out all the other stuff that's actually in the September moment, which we'll go over the features that are actually added, you will have to go through these steps. So I just want to make that clear that none of this is a requirement. If you just wanted to wait till 23H2 comes out later on this quarter, then you can wait for that and you can then play with the features then. However, when 23H2 does come out, these things will be turned on by default. So if you are worried about Copilot, like, hey, we don't want our kids or we don't want to have users using Copilot right now. Kids, you probably wouldn't have to worry so much because there's no student licenses. For Bing Chat for Enterprise, because Copilot ties in with Bing Chat for Enterprises. But with Copilot, if you wanted to turn that off, there is a group policy and a CSP within Intune that you can deploy to turn that off. So I just want to make all of that clear. So go ahead, Scott, you can go ahead and continue.
Yeah. So Richard, appreciate that for the clarity there. So again, that's why we were saying this is unplugged. We hadn't rehearsed any of this stuff today. So again, we just wanted to make sure you had all this. So next slide, Garrett. All right, so other new features that came out in Windows 11. One it's called a config refresh. So this is a really cool feature, especially if you are using the policy CSP to manage the settings. Basically, what this will do is this is in the settings catalog, but you can also do custom owner URIs for this. But it allows you to, if you have configuration drift in any of your CSP settings, it'll go back by default every 90 minutes and reset that back to the setting that you have it set to. So again, this only affects any policies that are governed by the policy CSP. So there's a few, we've linked to it in, I think, one of the other slides. And then Richard in there put a OMA URI for you to enable the config refresh there as well.
Yeah, let me actually comment. Scott, I want to comment on this real quick. So config refresh, if you're used to group policy every 90 minutes, group policy will reapply your GPOs. This is the same idea. Well, before this, we actually didn't do that. So if someone had admin rights and they went into the registry, they mucked around with the policy manager registry location where we store all these policies, they could actually have messed around with those things and these settings wouldn't come back. So as Scott's saying, with any CSP that is, any policy that is under policy CSP, now most of you guys won't know this. If you're just setting your policies in Intune and you're pushing things out, you probably have no idea what we're talking about when we say policy CSP. But the vast majority of policies that are configured in Intune today all fall under the policy CSP. I'd say like probably 85, 90% of all the policies that you're pushing through Intune are going to fall under that. So what that means is that if you turn config refresh on, every 90 minutes, we're going to go back and say, oh, is there any config drift? If there is, we're going to set things back to the way that you have intended them to be through Intune. And so right now, because this is so new, we have an entry in settings catalog for it. You can actually do a search for the words config refresh, and you'll find it there. But what you won't find is an actual setting. You find the category, but the setting does not actually show up. So as Scott and I were talking about this the other day, I was like, okay, well, let's go find the CSP, and we had to go dig through the CSP docs to find where this was because there's no actual documentation for it. So we found in the CSP docs that we actually did list config refresh there. And so what you see on screen here is the OMA URI that you'll need to set to enable it. And then by default, it'll do this every 90 minutes. I'm not sure, Scott, why it says 90 minutes or 30 minutes by default. It should be 90 minutes by default. You can configure the interval if you want it less than 90 minutes, you want every 30 minutes, you can do that. It's a different CSP or it's a different OMA URI that you would set for the duration. I didn't document the duration here, but if you just wanted to turn this on right now, then you can go ahead and just set this OMA URI to do that. All right, go ahead, Scott.
All right.
So wait, really quick, Tyler has a question about tattooed policies like kiosk mode, for example. How does that come into play with something like config refresh? Do we know yet?
It actually wouldn't, because kiosk mode is under the assigned access CSP. So because that doesn't fall under policy CSP, assigned access wouldn't be affected by this.
Okay, so go ahead. Sorry.
All
right, all good. So
actually, sorry, Scott. One thing. So Jonathan mentioned this. No, this is still along the lines of the refresh. So I want to make sure we get Jonathan's question answered. So does it refresh the CSP while offline? That's a good question. And usually when people say that's a good question, the person that's saying that doesn't know the answer to it. And so I don't know what the answer is to that. Because we also have something called config lock, which will lock you into a specified config. But again, that too is also tied to policy CSP. So we'll have to go and look because we just released this today, and there isn't any formalized documentation on. There might be right now. Like they might have released new docs at like 10 a.m. Pacific, which is typically when we do our big doc update on like stuff that comes out on Patch Tuesday. So they may have released something then, but we haven't seen any formalized docs on any of that kind of stuff. So we'll take a look after the call and see if we can find something.
All right.
All right, Scott. Now you can interrupt.
Officially, you can go.
Yeah, I know. I officially, it's fine. I appreciate all of the. So, and then there's just some extra stuff to Windows Firewall that we added as well. Targeting rules for specific applications, location awareness, new settings. Some of those I haven't been able to dig in on. Again, we'll pull some links from it once they get some of that documentation updated on the firewall. And again, if those settings are not in Intune, if they're not in the 2309 service release, I would just suspect that they'll be in the 2310 service release because they try to keep those consistent as possible there as well. There's also a few other pieces in around areas around accessibility. So there's some voice access improvement. There's some more additions to, and more languages have been added to narrator for a more inclusive experience. And then probably the last one is we've brought some mobile application management to Microsoft Edge. So if you have devices that need to access resources through the Edge browser, and specifically they're accessing your organization's resources, you can actually configure Microsoft Edge if when they sign in with a work or school account to ensure that it meets their device meets certain conditional access requirements before they get access to any of the resources. And so that, again, that's something new here. Believe you do have to be on Edge 117 for that. But again, just that's some of the other additional things that have been released. So anyway,
yep.
Let's go at that. I believe is the last slide. And then we also linked all of the Copilot in Windows announcements from last Thursday. And so you can go to all of the blogs. If there's any new ones in there, we can add a slide to this. Again, like I said, the paint hasn't dried on this deck yet. And this is something because it was just so much content that we wanted to get out to all of you today, so you could start digesting this. It was a lot of stuff. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share out my desktop and just demo to the best of I can. Again, this is really going to be an unplugged moment here. So let me get set up.
Actually, Scott, if you want me to drive it, I can do it. I've got the.
Yeah, why don't you do it?
Okay.
You can do it. Do you have the rules set up too in Intune? They might want to see that as well.
Yeah, I've got
go ahead. Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead.
But before we do that, let's actually look at what we see on the desktop. So, because Scott just went through and explained the different policies and things that we had to go through to get all of this stuff set up. So like he mentioned, when you go through and you just go check for updates today, you won't actually get all of the features until you turn the policies on. So we'll look at the policies in Intune and exactly what you would need to set there. But when we look at a device, when everything's all turned on, you'll see an icon on the desktop or on the taskbar. Looks like this is the new Copilot icon, this multicolored item that you can see here. And so Copilot ties in with Bing Chat Enterprise. And so when you look at this looks almost exactly like what you might see in the sidebar of Edge. If you open up the sidebar in Edge, you click on the Bing icon in the top right, you would see something that looks very similar to this. And that's all just doing things through Bing Chat for Enterprise. However, with this, you can actually do things to interact with the OS. Like if I wanted to turn dark mode off, I can just say turn dark mode off. It's going to give me, once it processes it, it'll give me an option here that says, sure, would you like to switch off the dark mode? And I'll say, yep, turn that off. And now it goes to regular light mode, I guess. And so I can do a number of different things within the operating system, and I can interact directly with the OS with Windows Copilot or Copilot in Windows. This is gonna be like a swear jar, I think, Garrett. We're gonna have to like put money into it every time we say this the wrong way. Now, if you're interested in what can you do collectively within Copilot for Windows that's different from Bing Chat for Enterprise, because we've had sessions on Bing Chat for Enterprise, at least on the National Office Hours. I know Garrett and Dwayne had done a session I think it was last week, right, Garrett? So that session went through Bing Chat for Enterprise. And here, if I create a new topic, there's this Learn More link that if you click on that, this will take you to the Copilot for Windows information page. And through here, you'll see how to get started, how to interact with it, and how to chat with it. And if you've used Bing Chat for Enterprise before, you probably know most of this stuff. But the things that you can do in Windows, you scroll down about 3/4 of the way down the page, this will tell you what are the things that you can do within Copilot. And so a lot of the stuff, I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, take a screenshot, that's Windows Shift S. Open File Explorer, that's Windows E. Snap by Windows, that's hold the Windows key and left or right. Like a lot of the stuff are keyboard shortcuts that I already know. So I probably wouldn't use Copilot for some of this stuff, but that's because I know the keyboard shortcuts. If you didn't know the keyboard shortcuts, you can just tell it to open specific applications. You can tell it to do like different troubleshooters. Like I don't know the keyboard shortcuts for troubleshooters, so I can do that. So, but the nice thing about this is that you can also use your voice. So if you like, I'm in a VM right now, so I can't tell it to do something. The mic just isn't going to pass through to this VM. But if I was on my physical desktop, I could just call these things out. I can just take a screenshot. I still think it's faster with Windows Shift S to do it, but that's just my own opinion and how I work. So very cool that we're now integrating Copilot directly into the operating system. And if you want to use just Bing Chat to do regular searches like you have done in the past, you could do that as well. So this session isn't really designed for us to go through like how to use the product. It's more so how do we manage the product? And so let's go take a look at what that looks like in Intune. So the first thing Scott talked about was this optional updates with controlled feature rollout. And so I'm just going to kind of get back out of this and walk through the process to do this. So I've created a custom OMA URI setting. It says enable optional updates with CFR. So if you've never done this before, hit create profile, go to Windows 10 and later, templates, and then custom. And you'll create this custom profile, give it a name. With CFR. And then you'll want to add your custom OMA URI settings. And so in the deck, I had included all the info that you would want. So I'm just going to copy and paste. Do that. Now we get our OMA URI. Now it's important with the OMA URIs. If you've never done this before, you want to make sure to check when you're copying and pasting in here that you don't have any trailing spaces or leading spaces, and you want to make sure that the dot and the slash are there. That's not a typo. You need to make sure that those are there. And then you want to make sure that we are specifying that this is an integer and a value of 1. And when you do that, that turns on the controlled feature rollout functionality, and it allows optional updates to be installed. And then you can just save this. And then if you use scope tags, you can specify scope tags. And then for your assignments, you can target whatever groups are appropriate within your environment to turn this on. And I don't need to save this, so I'm not going to. But that's how you would create that policy. So that's policy number 1. There's 2 things you got to set. There's that one, and then there is the policy for temporary feature control. This is the continuous innovation stuff that we keep talking about. And so to set this up, this one's a little bit easier. You just go through, create a profile for settings catalog. And then here, we use like the biggest words for some of this stuff. Makes it hard to remember, at least for me. And so within here, we'll just look for Windows Update for Business. And then you can scroll all the way down. Or no, I think it's actually up. Yeah, it's up. It's at the top. Allow temporary enterprise feature control. So select that, and then mark that as allowed. Now, unfortunately, this is not an update rings like someone had mentioned earlier. Like they're disappointed that it's not an update rings. I agree. There's a lot of stuff that's in settings catalog that I think should be an update rings, but we can have a long conversation about a lot of things I think should be fixed. But this right here is what you need to also deploy. So we'll deploy this out to a group. So target same group that you would target the controlled feature rollout. So if you want to test this stuff out for your devices, like as an IT admin, then I would target this to your IT group just to make sure that you guys test this stuff out, see if there's any problems with it, and go from there. And so those are the 2 policies that you would need to configure. Once those have been configured, we then want to go back to our VM and we want to take a look at something. So let's just close, minimize this out. So in my VM, if you did this correctly, what you should see under Windows Update is this first box right here that's all grayed out that says get the latest updates as soon as they're available. This will normally be set to off if you are using Windows Update for Business to manage your updates. This will normally be turned off. When you turn on the optional, the allow optional updates with the controlled feature rollout, when you do that, that will turn this to on and it keeps it grayed out. And then once you have the other policy set for allowing temporary features, once you have both of those set, you can manually check for updates. You will then see the 9D update, the update that we released today. You will see that KB come down and that'll install. So what you should see if you look at update history is you'll see 2309 cumulative update preview. That's what came out today on 9/26. Preview for Windows 11 version 22H2, and this is the KB article that you should see installed. You should also see under optional updates, this is what Scott was talking about, these Windows configuration update. This update, also installed today, this is what's actually turning these features on. So think about when we talk about EKBs, we talk about these enhanced KBs that come down and they turn all these features on, they magically show up, and it makes the update seem like it happens super fast. It's not really super fast. All we do is we install this cumulative update, and then sometime later we install the configuration update. Well, so all we're doing is basically speeding up that EKB process by doing the stuff that we're explaining today. So if I look at this configuration update, I can click on Learn More here. And this is the only place that I found that actually links to this doc. And this doc it's actually quite amazing how nice this doc is, because it explains all of the new features in a very easy way to go through and see like what was added to the September moment. So I can click into here and it tells me exactly, okay, Copilot and Windows Preview explains all of what Copilot for Windows Preview is. Explains if you're using MSA or an Azure AD account, Copilot is going to use those accounts. And then if you're using an Azure AD account and you have Bing Chat for Enterprise turned on, it'll use Bing Chat for Enterprise as opposed to just using regular Bing Chat. So this page right here, it's not linked in, at least the documentation that I've seen that I was poking through this morning. No, there was no documentation that linked directly to this page outside of me going directly from here to there. So this has been really cool to actually come across this. And so we link to this in the deck. In one of the slides in the deck, you have a link directly to this. So if you're curious about all the features that we released, and there's a ton of them, as you start like just for taskbar system tray notifications, there's a ton there. But even File Explorer, we added a number of items to File Explorer now, like recommended. Like if you go to the home page of File Explorer, you'll now have recommended documents that you use often. Now, this is a test account, so I just got a bunch of dummy data in here and things that I mess with. So I don't have like a really good environment to showcase all of this. But you would see recommended documents from either things that you've worked on or other things that maybe coworkers have worked on, and they think, and we think that you would probably be interested in it. I don't. If you want to know about controls and all that, I haven't looked at controls for any of this stuff yet, so I'm not sure exactly the best way to control some of the stuff if you want to turn that off. But that's something we'd have to look at later. But going through, all of the different documentation here for the September moment, I think some folks have talked about backup. So the backup app is interesting. We're aware of the challenges that the backup app is causing for some of you. I know some of you say, hey, can we just remove this and get rid of it? We're looking at it. I'm pretty optimistic that we'll have a fix there to handle this. I don't know of a temporary workaround right now to remove the backup app. It could be as simple as just running a PowerShell script to just remove the app. I have not had any chance to look into seeing the best way of handling that, but we're going to handle that, because the problem with this is that backing up a work or school account is not supported. So this is really more of a consumer thing, but it's showing up on enterprise or managed devices, and a lot of folks are kind of upset about that. So we are looking at fixing it, but there's no ETA right now. And so there's again, a ton of stuff here to go through, but I wanted to make sure to call out that this doc exists so you know what actually came through the September moment. And so, yeah, so from Windows Update perspective, if things work the way that they should, you should see a cumulative update here installed for the preview release, and then you should see the configuration update. And that's basically it. And so as we go through these moments are not going to stop. We're going to keep doing this throughout the year as we go into next year in 2024. You'll have the same kind of experience we had. If we go back to the doc, this doc is explaining the different configuration updates that we've had in May. There was one in February for the February moment, but I don't know why they don't have it listed here. But in any event, I suspect that this doc is probably going to be updated with like the next moment that comes out in the beginning of next year, right? So you'll have new highlights and new information and stuff about what's actually added to these moment releases. So I thought it was pretty cool. It's also a good place to understand the controlled feature rollout technology. We explain what that is, and then this temporary enterprise feature control. So there's documentation for that as well. So in the deck, you have a link directly to this page, and you can go through and learn more about all this stuff. And with that, I don't know, Scott, Garrett, did I miss anything?
Did you actually demo it?
Demo Copilot?
Yeah,
I did.
Okay, I missed it.
I mean, I just turned off dark mode. That was it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But you wanted to ask like who is.
I just think it's important to call out, if you didn't already, right, that yeah, this will be interesting. Right, notice up at the top it does say protected, so this is using BCE or Bing Chat Enterprise for faculty, and that's automatic. So again, I threw it in the chat, but on Monday, ooh, I'm an army logistician. Yeah, that's true. On Monday, yesterday, September 20th.
Apparently, your friend April now is running a scam.
Yeah,
great.
We don't want that one. We don't want that one.
Okay.
We'll cover that one up.
See, this is okay. We're gonna have to work on my personal branding, I guess.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm trying to say something. On Monday, on September 25th, we did light up all education tenants with Bing Chat Enterprise for faculty. So that is now turned on automatically for all of your tenants. In some cases, previously there was a toggle that you could go enable that that page to go turn on BCE. That's actually been deprecated. So it's now enabled automatically for everyone's tenant. The one thing that's different between commercial tenants and EDU is that there are licenses in the M365 Admin Center, just like your standard A3, A5 licenses, where you would go and assign those licenses to users. Those Bing Chat Enterprise for faculty licenses are not quite available. In some cases, if you're on what they call the unified SKU, which is the Microsoft 365 A3 or A5 for faculty, it's just going to show up as a line item or an app under that SKU. And you can then turn it on or turn it off for individual users just based on licenses like you would any other service in M365. If you're on the original SKU, though, right, you've got the Office 365 A3 or A5 plus EMS A3 or A5 plus Windows A3 or A5, right? If your SKUs are broken out in your tenant, then you're actually going to see the Bing Chat Enterprise license show up in the extra features, which you should all probably be familiar with because that's where remote help landed for a lot of EDU tenants too. So just a note on that, but again, Windows Copilot or Copilot in Windows is going to respect that Bing Chat Enterprise. So even though you can interact with the OS a little more, it's still built on Bing Chat too. So that was my only call out.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah.
One thing to know on Copilot, if you wanted to disable Copilot. So again, today, you're not going to have any problems. You shouldn't have any problems with people just installing a build and getting Copilot. If the device is unmanaged, then, I mean, you've got a bunch of other problems if you have a bunch of unmanaged machines in your environment. But if a device is unmanaged today and they went to Windows Update, they checked for updates and they installed an update, they'll probably see Copilot. They'll probably see the September moment. because it's an unmanaged device. But if the device is managed, with Windows Update for Business, you shouldn't see any of the September moment features until you do the stuff that we explained earlier. However, once we get to 23H2 being released and these features are turned on, you may want to turn Copilot off, or you might have some requests from management to turn Copilot off. And if that's the case, I can't comment what's going to happen on the day of 23H2 being released, because I don't know exactly if stuff is going to be in Intune yet. But right now, if you look through settings catalog to turn off Copilot for Windows, you can't do it right now. You look at my screen, you do a search for Copilot, the policy is not there. If you wanted to do this with a custom policy, then you could set it through this custom OMA URI. You would set this, and it's an integer, so you would just turn that to 1. So just wanted to call that out from an Intune perspective. From a group policy perspective, there is an ADMX for that. I don't know if it's actually here. Let me just do a quick check. GP edit. So it's a user policy. It's not a device policy, it's a user policy. And when you go under Windows Components, Windows Copilot's here. So in GP edit, Windows Copilot, to turn this off, you can do that. As Scott was mentioning at the beginning of the call, if you haven't updated your central store for your group policies in some time, now's a good opportunity to do that. It's usually a good opportunity to do it at any major release of Windows. So when 23H2 comes out, I don't know if we're going to have a dump of the ADMX files, but if we don't have a dump of the ADMX files and a place for you to download a zip file of all the new ADMXs, you could always do that yourself. If you've never done it before, just go into C Windows policy definitions, and you can just copy and paste this whole directory, because these are all the ADMX files. And one of the ADMX files is Windows Copilot. Not Copilot in Windows like marketing would want you to say, but it's Windows Copilot. So that's what's controlling. That's why we see this here. So if you want to update your ADMXs, that's how you could be proactive if you want to. Just copy it from an up-to-date Windows client device, and you can copy and paste those in. All right. Any questions? I'm not looking at the chat, so I don't know if
Scott's got his hand up.
Yeah.
Ahead, Scott.
So a couple of things that you can do. One other cool thing is I wanted just to mention on the Copilot in Windows is you can actually use it to create content. So if you wanted to go and create an image, so just know that Copilot in Windows is more than just flipping the switches on Windows. Like, for example, it pulled up all that stuff, but like if you actually wanted it to create an image, so like type in create an image of a tree. That's Richard. It'll actually go out to I think it's DAL4 or something that's on Chat GPT. See what it'll come back with.
Yeah, it'll use DALL-E to generate the images.
Yeah, and then you can use that it'll open it up in Bing, and then you can actually add the, it'll you can make the cat. It'll give you a couple of questions. That way.
And we've also recently added image search to it as well. So down here, there's this add an image button, and this is kind of like an iframe, sort of. It's not really an iframe, but it seems like it's an iframe to Bing, right? Because it looks almost exactly like the Bing sidebar, or if you use like the Bing app on your phone, this all pretty much looks exactly the same. And so you could do the same kinds of things with all of those platforms. And so, so you could put in an image here and have it do an image search, do like a reverse image search, or you could ask it like, hey, what is this? So like if you see like some weird bug or whatever, we've had that kind of functionality though on cell phones for a while. When you do like Google Images or whatever, you can do a search for that image and just figure out what it is you're taking a picture of. So you can do the same kinds of things here. But yeah, here's our Ninja Cat that DALL-E created. It's kind of cool. And so this, like Scott mentioned, is pulling us out into Bing, and it's showing us what it created more on a full screen. And so it's the Ninja Cat climbing a tree.
I mean, this is really exciting, right? Because this is now part of Bing Chat Enterprise. And so again, Bing Chat Commercial versus Bing Chat Enterprise, your chat history is not saved. Your anything that you put in here cannot be used to train the backend LLMs or anything like that. So know that you've got the commercial data protection on here. I do want to call out though, just because it's been a common question, that Copilot in Windows and in some of the other Copilots out there, like M365 Copilot, which is still in preview, those right now are not, they don't fall under the BAA. So if you're an academic medical center and you're using this for medical purposes, I would just be aware of that. I would actually disable Copilot in Windows in healthcare right now, just to ensure no PHI escapes. But I mean, the beauty of Bing Chat Enterprise is that none of that data should leak out at all. It's just know that it's not covered under the BAA today while it's in preview. We're working on it. It is covered under the data protection addendums that we have in place with your agreements, just not the BAAs. So one little nuance there. I just want to call it out for any of you governance folks.
Yeah, and just to answer some of the questions in the chat. So Ray's asking any filtering. Ray, you're talking about content filtering?
Yeah. So pretty much, you you can just type in whatever. Since we're a school district, that's always a big topic, right?
Right. Yeah. There's no real filtering. In fact, so Bing Chat for Enterprise is not licensed for students. It's only for faculty and staff. And then you also, so you won't be able to use that. I actually haven't tried this with a student account that is not licensed to see what the experience is in Windows Copilot. I'll have to try that after the call to see what exactly we see through this. But yeah,
I think that's why it's a user policy, right? So that we can enable Copilot in Windows for faculty as opposed to students.
Right, exactly. And so as things get released, like you'll most likely turn this off, or you may turn this off for students, or at least certain grade levels. So there, we have the controls for that, but there is no like content filtering. Now with Bing, we do have strict search capability, right? So if strict search is turned on, then it'd be just like if you were searching in just a regular search engine. There is filtering from that aspect. But there's no additional like specific websites and they're like an actual content filter. There's nothing like that.
And don't we enforce safe search specifically for education SKUs in Windows, Richard?
Yeah, if you're on Pro Education or Windows Education, strict safe search is turned on by default, and that was actually a problem when Bing Chat Enterprise first came out, because we couldn't use Bing Chat Enterprise on strict safe search in Bing. Like it would just fail. It would just tell you you're not licensed for this. And we've since fixed that. But initially when it came out, it was a problem. All right. Brad Evans asks, can we not just import that ADMX into Intune? That's a good question. Now, I do actually have an answer to this one. So when you have ADMXs that are built into Windows that fall within the Windows components nodes. So whether it's a computer or a user configuration, if it falls under Windows components, you actually can't import those into. Actually, I think you can import them, but you'll get a failure message if you try to. Actually, I think if you try to import it, I think it actually gives you a failure message. I tried this a while back for some other things that weren't in Intune, because I really didn't want to create custom OMURIs for them. In fact, we may have not even had custom OMURIs for the things that I was working on. So I tried to import them directly into Intune, and I wasn't able to do it. So this, I suspect, to be the same thing because it's underneath Windows components. So the next best thing is just to create a custom OMURI right now. Again, like I mentioned before, this isn't going to be a big problem, I think, until 23H2 comes out. And that's when the features are actually turned on when those builds come out. So once you have deployed those builds, that's really when you would want to turn off Copilot if you need to for a specific population of your users. I'm just kind of scrolling back here through the chat just to see if there's any questions that we didn't get. I think we got most of them though. What do we have now? Okay, looks like we're caught up on all the questions. Anything before we wrap up? We got a couple minutes. Nope. All right, folks. Well, thanks a lot for joining. Hope this was useful and helpful. If you have any questions or if this is like confusing or you want to test it out and it's not working, post a message to the team chat, or you can post it, I think, here into the meeting chat. I think you all still have access to it after the call's over. If you guys have any questions, let us know, and we'll be happy to look into that stuff and help you out.
Yeah, and we'll make sure the deck is available too, so that you can access all those links that Scott walked you through earlier, so you can go look up more stuff. But yeah, thanks everyone. Great job, Scott and Richard. Thanks for putting this together at the last minute. I love that we can do this the day of, and we can all come together and learn together. So awesome job, everyone.
Yep.
And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
All right, guys. Take care.